Welcome to the podcast, Happy and Single. I'm your host, Joseph Anderson. You can find me on Instagram at the It's Possible Guy, and you can find our episode on Instagram at Happy and Single. Now today is episode 41, and it's entitled, Don't Worry About What Other People Think. You know, where this episode stems from, I had an experience literally today. I went to the store and it's interesting because, well, I better tell you, I'll tell you the story first. So, I went to the store and I'm looking to be more creative. It's part of a program called The Artist Way. And so I went and bought I bought a coloring book. And it happened they really didn't have that big of selection of coloring books. I really wanted a Ninja Turtle coloring book, but they didn't have that, so I ended up going with a Mickey Mouse coloring book. Now, when the guy checks me out, he looks at me like, oh, kind of half joking, like, oh, so you got this for yourself? And I'm like, yeah. And he almost looked at me funny. He's like, you got this for a kid, right? I'm like, no, this is for me. And he's like, really? Really? And I'd thrown a candy bar on the conveyor belt as well. And he's like, so you're going to go home and do a coloring book and eat a candy bar? And I'm like, yeah. And it was just super funny, his response. And then as I've started to do, I just asked him, I was like, hey, do you like podcasts? And he's like, no. So I even told him, I was like, you know what? One of the things about, helping people create a great life really is that of being creative. Now, the really interesting thing about this, about how it happened today, was I've been on a tear. Like, just especially this week, I have felt like I've been in the zone and just doing everything that I felt like I needed to do. Just getting everything done that I wanted to, that I needed to. And here I am, super excited to sit down and just sit down and color. It's super relaxing and it's super fun, and just being a lot more like a little kid will actually help you have a lot more success in your life, because little kids don't care. I could tell my little nephews, the ones that are super young, to do stuff, and every now and then they'll listen, but there's plenty of times they just sit and laugh at me. But what if we could just sit and laugh at somebody else? Like my nephews don't laugh at me in a rude way. It's not like, they're not laughing at me because I'm, making mistakes or doing poor things in life. They're just laughing because they're like, no, I don't want to do that. And there's no way that you're going to make me. So this experience with this guy today could have had a couple different outcomes. I'll be honest, like I did think about it a little bit. It was like, oh man, here I am, excited, and the crazy leprechaun voice starts to swirl a little bit in your head. I mean, I didn't give it like much merit, but it could have. And it's interesting that a lot of times when you're trying to create in your life, when you're trying to do really good things, you're going to experience opposition. That's just usually what's going to happen. And when that stops being a big deal, like here's another scenario that I could have had with this gentleman. I don't know his name. I didn't get his name. Otherwise I might actually use it. But with this guy, I could have been like, oh my goodness, this guy's right. Yeah, no, I shouldn't be doing that. And, just keep going like, oh, I'm way too old for this. Why, and one more thing that's not working out, or I don't know. I mean, I could have spun it a lot of different ways. Why do I care that the guy that works at the store that sells coloring books cares about me? I don't. And I only bring that story in to share with you guys. Like, I'm not going to go around and be like, hey guys, you wouldn't believe what this guy did. He told me that I shouldn't color Mickey Mouse coloring books. Isn't that interesting though? Like George Bernard Shaw said, we don't grow old, or we don't Stop playing because we get old. We get old because we stop playing. I love that quote. Guys, living your adventure, you're gonna have plenty of people that think what you gotta do with your life. Plenty. And when that's not a big deal to you, oh, that was the thing I was gonna spin off on earlier. If I didn't be like, well, that guy shouldn't be telling me what to do. He's working at a store that sells coloring books. He shouldn't be telling me what to do. How dare him? He should be inspiring me and say, you know what you should do? You should keep going. That's so cool that you're living your best life, that you're enjoying yourself. I could have spun that so many different ways. But I understand that it doesn't matter. At first, this episode was going to be entitled, Don't Think About What Other People Say. But guys, we do. We're human. We think about what other people say, but that doesn't mean that we have to sit there and dwell on it and worry about it. And sit there thinking, oh my goodness, this is so unfair that this person was mean to me. Well, and the funny part also that I just remembered about this experience, the other person another girl that was working the other cash register at this store, as I left, she's basically this was a snarky voice, well, enjoy your coloring book. I'm so above you. Who cares, guys? There will be so many people that will seek to bring you down. And I hate to admit this, but some of the closest people to you will seek to bring you down. And I don't think it's out of malice in most cases, I would hope. I think it's just in the fact that most people think that they know what's best for you, even when they don't. I've shared with you guys before that there's a saying by a man named Brigham Young, who was one of my early religious leaders. Well, the early religious leaders in my church. I never met him. He was years ago. But he said, I care about two opinions. What God thinks of me and what I think of me. You know what, guys? You're just going to have that happen. And this is just, me kind of shooting out of left field now. But the thought that occurs to me is because so many people see somebody light up when they go back to that place of their childhood. They see people light up, they see people get excited, they see people happy, and they almost want to bring them down. Now, guys, I have to admit, and I'm not entirely proud of this moment, but quite a few years ago, we're talking in the area of right around 10 plus years. There was this guy, and I used to be a little bit harsher, a little bit more judgmental with people. And he was going away for the summer, and he was selling something that I kind of thought was a bit of a scam. And so I may have also done this where I made him not feel the best about what he was doing. But I try really hard not to do that anymore. I'm just sharing with you guys, nobody is immune. Everybody is on such a different road. We are all on different roads, but we're also on a different part of that road. The part of me that was, 15 years ago was a different person. It was a person that thought, well, yeah, your life hasn't gone exactly as you've wanted it to, but that's because you're not as awesome as me. That was only slightly my thought process back then. And the more you go through life, the more life takes you down a peg. It humbles you. And maybe it doesn't just do that. Maybe it helps remind you what's important to you. And the thing that's most important I've shared this and I'll share this plenty of times. One of the best things you can ever have in a relationship, or even, when you're single, is to be playful. Like when you find somebody that, I had this experience just a couple of days ago where there was a business acquaintance of mine, that happened to live somewhere in the northeast of the United States, and I just started thinking about him randomly, and so I tried to call him, couldn't get a hold of him, and then I tried, and so I looked at Facebook, I looked at LinkedIn, like on Google it said his office was closed. There was no sign of this guy. Well, do you know what I did? Like I went and I called a different office of the same name, and I talked to this person that's supposed to be the gatekeeper, right? And I just shared with her like what was going on, and I'm like, you gotta help me find this guy. Like, where is he at? And so, we ended up having a really fun time on the phone. Now, this was supposed to be the big bad gatekeeper. Well, probably 5 or 10 minutes into our conversation, if it was even that long, we're sitting there laughing and having a good time trying to find this guy. And and she, emailed me back and told me that, hey, we haven't, we know he no longer works for, our particular business, or, a franchise of our business even, but that's all I got. So I called her back and gave her a hard time. And like, all right, what else you got? Like, we were going to get to the bottom of this mystery. What was going on? Well, it's interesting what I noticed in that moment about even being playful myself, or noticing in this moment. So often other people I've called and just been like, hey, I want to coach you or whatever. And it hasn't worked out. I mean, usually you kind of get on the phone and almost expect to get shot down. Well, I did this thing where I actually blitzed most of a certain business, or a certain type of business in New York City. And I blitzed all of these numbers and just kind of, I was just basically, doing a really, really, really quick pitch, like, hey, I come in, I can help your business, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I got, definitely got the phone slammed on me many times. However, I honestly believe that if I would have done that same thing with just a super playful, fun way, not worrying, not caring about what anybody else thinks, not even worrying about what the other person on the phone thinks. Oh my goodness, this guy's calling me wanting to help me to grow my struggling business. Heaven forbid. Like, if I would have done it with just this super playful, fun attitude, I probably would have got a lot further. There's a quote I'm vaguely remembering, and I don't remember where this comes from, but it says, if we do, like, creating a new synapse in the brain or something like that basically takes 400 times of doing it. However, if you do that in a playful state, I think the number was like 20. And I can tell you guys that actually works, because when I'm playing this really cool guitar game called Rocksmith, like it's a legit guitar. You play the songs exactly the way the artists do. And there's a game on there to learn chords where you basically kill zombies. It's over the top and it's just super funny. But you have to play a chord to shoot the little gun. And so I would find myself, really trying hard to learn these chords. Well, now I find myself going through a song or going through a tab, and all of a sudden these chords, which before I would have to look up, I know instinctively. Because they came through play. Guys, I think when I started doing this episode, the thought was kind of doing it about play, but I've done quite a few episodes like that. And I think play coincides with not worrying about what people think. Like each of us sometimes worries about so much what other people think about what we are doing with our lives. Guys, your life is yours. You get to make of it whatever you want. And especially if you happen to be quite a bit younger listening to this, I can tell you, no matter what you do, you're going to make somebody mad. You're gonna always make somebody mad. That's just usually the case the way it is. And the more you start trying to make yourself happy instead of anybody else, the happier you're going to be. Could you imagine if you honestly didn't care whatsoever and you didn't worry what anybody thought? Or it didn't linger as long? There are certain people to me that their opinion does mean a lot. And some of those people have not been entirely supportive in many of the choices I've made. I say often, I have taken the road less traveled. Part of that probably I'm super stubborn. And part of that, I think this is my path. I shared the story of my cousin getting married later in life. It was either last week or the week before. I think it was, anyways. Like, just because we're not on somebody else's path that they think we're supposed to be on in our lives, doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. There's people out there that say, like, the real way if you're an influencer in the world is if you've got haters. I mean, you could be all for example, like, in sports teams. Well, my mentor tells a really cool story. He tells this story about him and his boy. So his name's Michael Neal. And he tells a story about him going to see a soccer match over in England when he lived over there. And his son looked at him and and they're walking into the game. He's like, "Oh, Dad, so which team is it that we're supposed to hate?" I love that story because, guys, that's us. We allow, like, there's people around us that are simply like that. They're like, "Oh, I hate your sports team because I have to." There's certain rivalries in the sporting world, and you just have to hate the other team's team. I'm an Arsenal supporter, and I've only been an Arsenal supporter for, it's been maybe 5-ish years, right around there. But anyone that becomes, an Arsenal supporter automatically has to hate the Tottenham Hotspur. So I hate the Tottenham Hotspur. Don't hate me, guys, and don't turn off the podcast. I don't care that much, but I do really enjoy watching Arsenal beat Tottenham. And there's countless examples like that. What if everybody around you is not operating from their own programming, their own thought? What if they're operating from previous programming that they've just had for a really long time? I mean, we even look to other people, like the story of Michael Neal. We even look to, like his little boy, we look to other people like, "Hey, okay, so tell me, what's my programming supposed to be? Who am I supposed to hate?" Like, we all do that stuff. We look to those people that we trust. No, this is going to sound bad, but the only thing that I truly, truly trust, for the most part, there's a few other people in there too, but is the inner voice. I've had experiences, and I've been told of experiences where, people are told to do something and they just have that cringy feeling inside. Guys, that's whenever you have that, when somebody else is telling you something, it's telling you that there's not truth to what they're saying. There's so many people out there that actually use this worry against us. One of those peoples are the marketing people. they teach you to worry that if you're not enough, if you just have their stuff, then you'll be fine. If you just have their car, you'll be fine. If you just have insert whatever here. I saw a funny post one time, and I have no idea where it came from, and I'm sure it's been shared a zillion times and tweaked and whatever, but it showed how like the mega rich, like the incredibly rich, like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world that just have billions and billions of dollars, many of them dress up in shorts and a t-shirt, or pants and a t-shirt, whatever. Zuckerberg wears the same thing every day, so he doesn't have to use any extra brain power. I'm just guessing in the entire world, there's probably somebody that doesn't care for what he wears, and probably people within his own company, but he doesn't care. So funny enough, Mark Zuckerberg, and this podcast I like to keep completely clean. So if you want to look up the actual phrase, you can. But Mark Zuckerberg's first business card said, "I'm CEO," expletive. He basically just say, I'm the CEO. I'm going to do what I want to do. What if we had a little bit more of that attitude in our lives? Not like a jerk. We don't have to be like upsetting and cruel to other people, like his business card. But what if you honestly believe that? Like, what if you were just, so in your zone, so in your life that it just didn't matter? Like, if somebody doesn't like you for what you're doing, guys, it just doesn't matter. There are so many good people in the world. And it was interesting because, I was sitting down with some people. I've shared before, but I'm up here in Rochester, Minnesota, helping my parents sell a house that they picked up. And some of the neighbors around here are just so incredibly nice. And so we were all sitting down last night, and we were just talking, and we actually started talking about religion. So, those of you that listen to this for a long time know that I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sometimes other people call us Mormons. And we were sitting down and we were just talking about, religion and some of that stuff. And, I thought it was really interesting that for so long, like, other faiths have, chose to hate other faiths. Especially in a world these days that much of it has forgotten God. There's never been a time that people need to be more unified. If people want to hear about my faith, awesome, I'm happy to share it with them. But I don't go around, telling people that, hey, your faith is awful, or your faith sucks, or anything like that. Because everybody gets to make their own choices. And I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody else. There's a cool scripture actually in the Book of Mormon that says there's things to act and there's things to be acted upon. Coming full circle on all of this, guys, when we act, things are going to try to act upon us. People's words are going to try to get to us. Now, I've shared how there's the crazy leprechaun thinking, but as I've shared many times, I believe there's a God and I believe there's a Satan. And I believe in both of them just as much. And oftentimes, when somebody says something so mean or so cutting to you, that's just Satan and all of his little minions trying to get to you. That's what happened today. There's that person trying to get to me is like, Joseph's doing pretty good lately. I gotta knock him down a peg. But going back to passing thoughts, if I have the thought that, this guy that I just barely met doesn't think that I should be living my life the way that I am. Like, guys, if we listened to every single thing that everybody said to us and changed because of it, things wouldn't work out that well in our lives. And we'd be just, I don't know, like, is it really worth it for you to change who you are to make everyone else around you happy. Oh, but wait, when you change who you are, then another person's not going to like that. This is a super funny example, but we're up here at this house that we're fixing up. We don't have a washing machine and a dryer here, so I went to the laundromat for the first time in like, oh, I don't know, many years. And so I'm sitting there, and there's a TV show on. It's actually Home Improvement, and one of the characters, Randy, ends up, he's at this mall with his brother, and this bigger guy with his little brother, and Randy's a sophomore in high school or thereabouts, and the senior guy picks on him, and his little brother comes to his rescue. Well, he goes to school the next day, and apparently somebody from the school paper, which, I mean, of course, in high school is total authority, and people care about what it says. And they published this article about his little brother coming to his rescue, and so everybody starts making fun of him. Well, he looks over and sees this girl that he's super interested in, that she was actually with him right before it happened. She had left right before this guy, tried to beat him up. But she looks over and sees him laughing, and then Randy's brother, I think his older brother looks at him and he's like, dude, she's laughing at you. She saw the article about you being a pansy, and not fighting your own battles. And so Randy goes after school and finds the guy that published this article, and he says, he happened to, he punched him in the nose and gave him a bloody nose. Well, the next day he sees this girl at school, the one he's interested in, and he walks up all proud of himself. He's like, hey, I guess you heard what happened, right? She's like, yeah. And then Randy tells her, well, you thought I was a wimp. I had to punch him. And she's like, I wasn't laughing at his stupid article. We were laughing at something funny that you wrote, that you said in a different article. And isn't that funny how we do that? We're like, oh, the one person that we think we care about their opinion, we change our life because of them, and we have thought all wrong anyways. Isn't it so funny how that works out? Guys, we all do it. Every single one of us has changed some aspect of our life for somebody else. I remember growing up, we didn't have that much money, and so, my clothes weren't hand-me-downs. They were new, but in an area that had a decent amount of money, that was that wasn't good enough sometimes. And I got made fun of for some of the things I wore. And one time I was over at one of my friend's house that's was fairly wealthy. And he's like, yeah, Joseph, you just got to start buying these new clothes. And I'm like, well, that'd be nice. You got to change this, you got to change this. And I'm like, why do I want to change? If somebody doesn't like me for what I wear, who cares? It doesn't matter. But it mattered back then. And we start making things matter. Whereas there's been other people that haven't let things get to them. There's been other people that have been in that same situation. Like, okay, cool. Well, actually, I know of a particular individual I'm thinking of that, her family they had a huge family and they didn't have tons of money either. And, and she had, probably just plainer clothes. Well, people loved her because she didn't care what people thought. There's a great book called You Are Special by Max Lucado. And the gist of it is these Wemmicks, they either reward each other for doing good things and being attractive and all those things with golden stars, or they give people gray dots that don't have anything going for them. And so people either get lots of gray dots or lots of gold stars. And so, anyways, there's this character that he's kind of like, this isn't right, this isn't fair. And he comes across this girl that doesn't have any stars or any dots. And he says, man, that would be awesome. Like, how did you do it? And she's like, every day I go see the woodcarver. And so he, the little guy's name is Punchinello and the woodcarver's name is Eli. And so Punchinello goes and visits Eli, and Eli's like, dude, or I'm sorry, Punchinello's like, yeah, Eli, like my paint's all chipped. They're like these wooden puppet type deal, little creatures or whatever. And he's like, my paint's all chipped and I'm all messed up. And he's like, why would you want me to come see you? And Eli the woodcarver's like, because I made you. And that story is basically about how much God cares about each and every one of us. And he's blessing your life so much, more than you could ever imagine. And the less you worry about what anyone else thinks about you, and the more you focus on his opinion and your opinion of you, that's awesome. Your life is going to be so much happier, so much more filled with joy. I mean, think about it right now. If you happen to be somebody that worries about what everybody thinks, how's it working for you? And if the world thinks it's working, how's it actually working for you? Are you happy? Are you happy playing all these games and putting on all these masks and disguises so you please everybody except yourself? There's a scripture that basically says along the lines of, if a man gains all the riches in this world and loses his whole soul, then that's not cool. And it's not good for us either. That's not going to make us happy, going around and pleasing everybody else, only to realize I actually remember something that, about when we're 20 and we care what everybody thinks about us. When we're 40, we stop caring what everyone else thinks about us. When we're 60 or so, we realize nobody else was thinking about you in the first place. When somebody says something, they're thinking about them. In most cases, they're so concerned with what's going on in their own life that we just have to understand everybody's doing the best they can, guys. Everybody is doing the best they can given the thinking they have in the moment. So what about you? Do you choose to let everybody else make the decisions for your life and strongly influence your life? And if you do, is it working for you? And also, do you want to keep doing that? Do you want to keep living that life that you're living right now? Trying to walk around pleasing everybody, walking on eggshells, not being who you are. It reminds me of being in the first part of a relationship or getting a person to notice you that you're interested in. You're like, okay, well, what do they like? Okay, they like what do I see in them? What kind of guys are they interested in? What would I have to be? What do I have to stress? What do I have to say? The funny thing is, even if all that works, even if you transforming and changing your entire life works, it won't work. You will not be happy. If you transform your life, I'm not saying not to make good changes. But I'm saying if you transform your entire life to become somebody else's one, it's not going to last very long. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get super bored and you're not going to be doing the fun things that actually make you happy. And you're going to be frustrated. Whenever you change to become what somebody else is looking for, it doesn't work out. You know what, guys? This is another true story in Joseph's earlier life. that, anyways, so with some of my roommates, this was many, many years ago when I was in college, with some of my roommates, they chose to play video games considerably, like just, a very large amount. And they didn't get out very much and they just kind of, kept to themselves a little bit. Now, because Joseph is all knowing and all wise, right? He knows everything. He had these conversations with them that basically said, unless you change all these habits that you have, you're never getting married. This is a true story, guys. This is a true story. And so I tell them basically, like, guys, until you get all your stuff together, you're not getting married. Well, they've both been married for quite some time now. They're both happy. They both have kids, and here I am still single. So apparently, it works to just do you. It's like, for example, and we've seen the show. Oh, I love the show The Big Bang Theory. We look at Sheldon Cooper and we're like, oh my goodness, there is nobody that's gonna like that guy. He better worry what everybody think. I mean, he's actually a great example of not caring whatsoever about what anyone thinks, almost to the extreme. But what happens? He finds the perfect girl for him, Amy. And they're both very similar. They both talk the same. They both are into quite a few of the same things. Well, what if it works that way for each of us? So this is my true thought. I really do believe that God is the ultimate matchmaker. The times that I've found people in my life, it's when I was not looking, and especially in one of the cases, I really, really, really didn't want it at that time. Well, if he knows what's best for me, and he knows what's going to make me happy, and he knows me better than I know myself, and he also knows all the girls in the world better than they know themselves, well, there's a good chance that he's going to connect us. I'm not saying there's a one, but I am saying that plenty of the girls that I date resemble the one. So guys, what would it be like if you had that attitude, like was on Mark Zuckerberg's card of I'm CEO individual. Like, I'm CEO and it doesn't matter. I'm the CEO of my life and it doesn't matter whatsoever what you think about it. I don't care. There's a great scene from the movie Meatballs. And in the movie Meatballs, Bill Murray grabs this log and he just says, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Watch the clip on YouTube. Well, it just doesn't matter, guys. Like in that particular clip, what he's doing is he's the counselor at the camp with all these kids that are less fortunate. They don't have the type of money that other camp across the way has. And he's like, they've got masseuses and they've got trainers and they've got everything. And then he says, and it doesn't even matter if we win this tournament because all the good-looking girls are still going to go out with them because they've got all the money. And then he goes on this thing and just grabs this log and he's like, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Guys, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter what a single other person on the face of this earth thinks about you. Yes, I understand that especially people close to us, it does. Like, it does matter at least a little bit. Like, very much so matters to me what my dad thinks. Always has. Well, that's okay. I just don't have to give too much. I just don't have to give too much energy to that. And so I do care, but I've also learned to just develop this backbone where this is the thought striking me right now. When the day of judgment comes, when I'm dead, I'm not going to be accountable to my parents. I'm not going to be accountable to anyone close to me. I'm going to be accountable to God. And if he's inspired me and directed me to do things with my life, he's not going to be like, whoa, 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 Joseph, hold up. Somebody close to you said that not to do this, so it's cool, man. It's totally cool that you didn't do this. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's still going to be, hey, like, why didn't you get this done? And be like, oh, he told me not to. Yeah. My dad or my mom or somebody close to me or, like a good friend or somebody. Hey, everybody around us is doing the best job they can at the time. But because they're so lost in their own stories and they're lost in their own challenges in their lives, you have to be the captain of your life. I love the poem Invictus. Like, it doesn't matter what happens, guys. You've got to be there for you. If you're sick and tired of nobody coming to your rescue, hey, well, somebody got you to this podcast. And this podcast is here to tell you that you just have to trust that inner voice. I could not be more adamant about trusting this inner voice. Trust the inner voice. Don't worry about what everyone else around you thinks. It doesn't matter. I remember one time, I've mentioned this before, but I asked somebody close to me, is like, hey, you know what? I think you should cut down your podcast. I think you should cut down the length of time. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to the people that actually go on the group coaching call that I run on Monday mornings. And I asked them, since they actually listen to the podcast, they're like, no, we love the length. Isn't that funny? People that don't even listen to our stuff will tell us, I think if you did this, more people would listen. It's like, but you don't even listen. Yeah. And there really isn't. There's no judgment in any of these statements. I just want you guys to live your best life. The theme of this podcast, the theme of the Happy and Single community says, live your adventure. Nobody else's. Live your adventure. Don't worry what anyone else thinks about your adventure. Because when you start living it, it's actually pretty darn cool. Whatever's holding you back from living your adventure, whatever somebody said, guys, especially for like processing things, I know there's so many people out there that don't want to use a coach. They don't want to, they don't want to talk to a therapist or anything of the sort, or even a counselor. I can't recommend Julia Cameron's book anymore, The Artist Way. Like, I stopped doing it for a couple weeks and I noticed a massive difference in my life. Like, I noticed all this thinking coming back in my mind. Whereas her program, it gets all that thinking out there on the page every morning. Well, the less thinking I have in my head, the more space I have to work. We all have this train station of thought. 1,000,000 trains are coming through all the time. But we only pay attention to what moves us emotionally. Things we're trying to get or things we're trying to avoid. Well, what happens when this train comes in? It's like, oh my goodness, Joseph. Warning, warning, you should not be coloring. You are a 37-year-old man. You should not be coloring. Well, if I let that stick around, like, oh my goodness, you're right. And I've got to change this part of my life. I've got to change this part of my life. I've got to change this thing in my life. Well, then it's like a bunch of little people start getting that train's not only the train was just going to keep going. It was just going to keep going through the station, but we jump out in front of it and stop it. And we're like, no, get off. I've got to figure this out. I've got to know why this is coming through. Let it go, guys. The person said what they said because who cares? Insert whatever answer here. The person said this because, and then at the end, insert, it just doesn't matter. Don't give a care. Don't care whatsoever. The only person at the end of your life that's going to look back on your life and say, I lived my life, is you. I love the song I Lived by One Republic. I think it's amazing. Live, guys. Live your adventure. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks about your adventure. And if you're on the wrong track, God will speak to you. This inner voice, even if you don't believe in God, whatever you believe in will speak to you. And this inner voice will share with you the direct next steps that you need to take in your life if you listen. And sometimes it's interesting that we have this like faint background noise that sometimes we just give too much attention to. Like usually when I sit down and record a podcast, somebody starts mowing the lawn or somebody starts doing something outside. And that's what happened today. So I went outside and looked for for who was mowing the lawn to kind of see how much they had left. Well, the funny thing is, at least according to my audio software that shows the little where it's actually picking up sound, it's not picking it up. So what if I would have sat around and waited till this guy finished mowing his lawn, and then some other guy starts mowing his lawn? Like, we're gonna have that, guys. We're just gonna have a little bit of background noise often. But the more we just don't worry about whatever anyone's saying or thinking about us, the happier you're gonna be. Now, if you've made it to this point in the podcast, I'd like to invite you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I don't know how you got here, but that way, if you ever want to get back here again, it's right there for you in your subscriptions. And if you haven't already joined us, one of the really cool things that I do that's free for anyone that would like to participate is each Monday morning at 10 a.m. Arizona time, I host a group coaching call for Happy and Single. Anyone is welcome to come on, and you can even receive a little bit of one-on-one coaching time with me, depending on how many people are in the call. Now, every now and then that schedule changes, so you can go to the website happynsingle.com to be able to look at the schedule and also to be able to find the link to the Zoom room. Now, at the same time, if you would prefer a more one-on-one type of coaching experience where you can sit down and share your hopes and dreams and just kind of the stuff going on in your world, then there's another option available for you as well. Now, the bulk of my business is actually doing one-on-one coaching. If that's something you're interested in exploring, I've got a few spots open in my coaching practice. You can just message me on Instagram at the It's Possible Guy, and we can sit down and have a chat. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. I've worked with people across the world. I do everything over Zoom, so it actually makes it pretty easy. Thank you guys so much again for listening. And go out and live your adventure. Thank you.